call to order this regular meeting of the Anthony Wayne Board of Education. It is Monday, December 11th at 8 a.m. Carrie, would you please call roll?
Mr. Baden?
Here.
Mrs. Brent?
Here.
Mrs. Gwynn?
Here.
Mr. Lutz?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
All right, would you rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. The first item on our agenda in preparing for next calendar year is to appoint a president pro tem for the organizational meeting on January 4th of '24. I need a nomination.
I'll nominate Jeff Baden.
Okay, and a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Jana. And Troy. And Carrie, would you please call roll?
Mr. Baden?
Oh, wait a minute, we had one more thing in that.
And
Oops. Oops.
Well, actually, you'll need to.
Oh, was that separate?
Yeah, it's a
Okay,
separate
you're right,
vote.
never mind, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
So, Carrie, call roll, please, for that one.
Mr. Baden?
yes.
Mrs. Brent?
Yes?
Mrs. Gwynn?
Yes.
Mr. Lutz?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
All righty. Okay, now on to B, is to establish the date and time for the January organizational meeting as Thursday, January 4th at 6 p.m. Need a motion to
I move to
set that.
approve.
Kyle, and a second?
I'll second.
Troy. And Carrie, would you please call roll?
Mr. Baden?
Yes.
Mrs. Brent?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Mrs. Gwynn?
Yes.
Mr. Lutz?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
All right, for some reason, my
early
synapses
morning.
aren't in line today. Okay, next item is approving the minutes from our November 9th meeting. If there is
I
any,
move to approve.
okay, no comments, Kyle, and a second, please,
I'll second.
Troy. And Carrie, would you please call roll?
Mr. Baden?
Yes.
Mrs. Brent?
Yes?
Mrs. Gwynn?
Yes.
Mr. Lutz?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
All righty. Treasurer's report and financial info, Carrie.
Thank you. Excuse me. First item on the agenda is to approve the monthly financials for November of 2023 as presented. Item B is to approve the donations as listed. We're always very appreciative of these. You can see a large portion of those are from the grants that were awarded last board meeting by the Anthony Wayne Education Foundation, along with the donations listed below that. Item C is to approve the return of Title IV funds from the non-public allocation in the amount of $2.18 for fiscal year '23, per the final expenditure report dated 9/30. This was a situation where we could make a cash request for funds, and I had money encumbered. So actually, it was to the non-public. Lyell participates in our federal programs, and I had an extra, well, I had $2.18 encumbered, but they took a discount, and we received payment for that. They received a discount, so when we paid it, we paid $2.18 less, and if you don't expend those funds within 5 days, you get a little hand slap, but it was at the end of the financial, or end of the quarter when we paid it, and so therefore, we have to return the funds. They weren't spent, they were unspent funds because they took a credit, so, but in order to get the funds, it actually, since it was part of the CCIP in Title IV, it did hold up all of our project cash requests that I was trying to submit for this current fiscal year from the consolidated 24 CCIP. So even though it pertained to last year, it was due 9/30, it took till last month to get it all reconciled and approved because of $2.18. So
Okay.
it's an I's dotted and T's crossed things, but it's taken care of, so.
But another example where we have to provide financial services basically to a non-parochial school as a public entity.
Yes, they can participate if they have students that would attend White House Primary K through 4 building and choose to attend a non-public, and they meet the eligibility of having either one or more students that are both academically and economically disadvantaged, they can qualify to participate to receive services through our title programs. So, which would be Title I, Title II, Title IV, and they can also qualify for special education IDEA. So, but it is reconciled and everything's taken care of, and fiscal year '24 is good now, so. But I ask that you approve motions, or items A through C at this time.
Okay.
I'll move to approve.
I have a story. And a second. Dana. And Kara, would you please call roll?
Mr. Baden?
Yes.
Mrs. Brent?
Yes.
Mrs. Gwynn?
Yes.
Mr. Lutz? Mr. Miller?
Yes.
All right.
Next item on the agenda is a resolution of necessity to levy an additional tax in excess of the 10 mil limitation for the election to be held on March 19th, 2024. This would be for $3.3 million, and it would be for 2.42 mils. With the change in the May primary election, that election has been moved to March 19th, 2024. With that, all documentation, which would include this resolution will allow me to have the auditor certify the value in the millage, then return that to me to present a resolution to proceed, which is another board meeting, which is the second part of this motion. But in order to, we have to do all this and have it filed by December 20th. In a more normal situation, this would, with 3 new board members coming on, this would be being acted on by the new board. But in order not to tie the hands of the incoming board, I feel that this is necessary in moving forward. And part of that is because by January 31st, we have to submit a financial plan of how we were going to offset year 2 and 3 of our 5-year forecast. Year 2 is a roughly $70,000 deficit, and year 3 is a $3.6 million deficit. And this is due to a few things. First off, when we had our 5-year forecast that we approved in May, we were still including the full payment for Nexus. So we were including $1,950,000 annually in year 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27. At that time, 28 wasn't on there. I added that in November. And that was for the update. We also were not including, although we were aware that the ESSER funds were expiring, and those would be coming on the individuals, the intervention, or the intervention coaches that we were paying, or instructional coaches that we were paying out of ESSER, along with our nurses. We knew that that $1 million was coming back to the general fund in fiscal year '25. So basically, when Nexus short paid in May, we've treated Nexus as a little bit like we do the casino revenue. kind of base it on whatever we get that previous year is what we estimate moving forward, other than during COVID when that money fell back. We decided to reduce it because of places being closed and stuff. So, lost my train of thought. Reducing that down to 1.2 million in the 5-year forecast. Well, obviously, then we had the levy failure. But reducing almost $1 million out of the Nexus funds in fiscal year '23 in the next 4 years, that's a cumulative amount. That's $6 million over the 5-year forecast. But then we also added in fiscal year '25, $1 million in '25, '26, '27, and '28. So therefore, that nets out like a negative $10 million. So we've had several discussions and several meetings and are in the process of costing out several different options to be discussed with the new board starting in January. This just allows them to have this option as a solution, or a possible solution. It's not going to be this alone. You know, we know there's going to be some attrition. Jim, do you want to share?
Yeah.
Jim has lots to share. No, I'm just kidding.
No.
But no, it's been a work in
Yeah.
progress.
So one of the things that we do each year is that we look at every position that somebody either resigns and/or retires. And, you know, at this point, we already know for next school year, with the positions that were, people who are either resigning and/or retiring, we're at if we were to fill those positions except for one of them, based on need, we would be saving $462,000 just from that alone. So when you talk about 700-some thousand, you know, that's something that will help tremendously in that discussion. We do that every year. It's a natural practice, because if you don't need a position, you shouldn't just fill it just to fill it, right? And so we do take that into account. Now, with that being said, too, I think one of the things that as we look at our decrease in revenue, you know, we saw a minimal increase from the state. You know, it's less than 50 cents per student per day over the next 2 years. You know, that's not helping us. When we look at what's going on in the state legislature, and I'll talk a little bit about this later in my section, you know, more than likely in the next few days, we're going to see the state legislature approve legislation that's going to reduce taxes to school districts across the state of Ohio. Right now, they're estimating it to be $97 million over 3 years, but they'll pay us back half of that. Half of that. When they have enough money to do it in full, if this is really what they want to do. But this is a choice because they believe that we, as school districts, public school districts in the state of Ohio, have enough money to do what we need to do, as well as then increasing what we have to do. And there's several bills that we believe will get approved in the next few weeks that'll increase things that we have to do. Just it's a perfect example of what they continuously will do. I think also it's important to mention that the loss in revenue from the FT Mall, you know, and the agreement that was signed before any of us were on the board or as superintendent or treasurer. And I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying, you know, the agreement, I'm just saying that's a reality of what we're also facing as well, over $200,000 there, you know, in that change. So that's what we're faced with. You know, this Nexus situation, it's not a fun thing to deal with, and we're at the mercy of the county auditors that are associated with the Nexus pipeline, as well as the state and Nexus and court cases, and seeing where that all turns out here in the next, hopefully, few months. Hopefully that gets rectified. But Nexus is also something that I feel is not a solid, as we've seen right now, source of revenue. We can't rely on it because they may challenge it again 6 months from now. you know, because they really don't want to pay 100% of what the value of it is as far as their taxes. So we'll see where that goes. But we need solid revenue coming in, and the fact that we haven't been on the ballot for over 10 years, or we haven't had additional operational money approved through levies in over 10 years, I think it's a testament of what we tried to do to manage the money that was coming in, while several other school districts across this area have been on several times. We'll continue to work through plans and submit those requirements to the Ohio Department of Education with the new board coming in, and sharing options with them to solidify that and turn that in by the end of January. So yes, I have a lot to say, sorry.
No, no. And I know that was a short version. He's just
Yes.
tired from being up all night. I also do want to add that this would be for a 5-year period. That way it would come up to the taxpayers to be voted on again and not just a permanent, which is something that was with the previous levy. I also do want to share that this can be removed from the election if that is one of the decisions of the new board. And I don't want to sound like I'm putting it all on the new board members, but I feel like we need to give them the options as new board members coming in without tying their hands. But this is something, I have talked to Dora Anderson at the Board of Elections. She told me she's never been asked this question, but she also did relate to me, and this is a humorous thing to her, but she's like, she also said that, well, I've never ever had anyone have 12 board members running for board seats, and I was like, well, you know, Anthony Wayne is great, special, you know, so I was like, this is just a unique time for us, so, but she did call me to let me know that she wasn't able to find it, but she did share with me that February 21st of 2024 is when early voting starts. That's when ballots are mailed, so she's thinking it would be around this end of January that we could submit board action to have it pulled. She also did share with me, well, it's really not a big deal if it doesn't get pulled because the votes wouldn't count. And I was like, no, we don't want that type of confusion. So I did not hear back from her as of this morning via phone call or email. So is there any questions that you have? Any thoughts?
I think to mention too, the reduction, so it's 3.3 million of collection. The prior operational levy that we were asking for was 3.9 almost, right, million?
Yes.
So the
2.9.
reduction,
Oh,
About
sorry,
2.9
millage, okay, yes,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
millage
3.9
or millions
million.
of dollars, but yeah.
Yes, I apologize.
So the reduction, taking into account what people have asked for to try to reduce the ask in the operational levy, is taking out the teachers for full-day kindergarten, taking out that option for now.
The cost
The
associated
cost
with that.
with that. The other part, I'm still a strong supporter that we still need that amount of money that we asked for the first time for the operations side of it. And then we're also not asking to put the bond back on. We can relook at that a little bit later. But this need is still there. I've had individual discussions with all the board members, as well as the incoming new board members, to be on board with this and to talk through this and make sure that it's the right decision. Just because of the time constraint, we have to make this in the December timeframe to get it on the election. And then we still have lots of discussions next year in January, you know, to work through the issue. But
Yeah, with the change in the presidential election, that is what, you know, put us in this situation right now. I also do want to share that in January, so if this levy were to pass, we would start collecting in January of 2025. But I also want to mention that at that same time, December of 2024 rolls off the bond millage that we associated when we talked about that. Now, I did talk to Matt Thal at the Lucas County Auditor's Office, and he could not give me an estimate on that because 2024 is a reevaluation year. So he does not have rates, so he was not comfortable sharing that. So, but we feel it's just based on what our debt schedule shows, it's at 1.29 mils, but the Lucas County Auditor, they do things a little bit different, but we don't expect it to be less than a mil. So, like I just ran some brief numbers just based on not even considering the roll-off, looking at a $500,000 house, it's roughly $30 a month for just the, not even including the roll-off of the additional millage. So that's just based on 2.42 mils, so.
Yeah, and I think it's important to mention too, that as we look at, so if this were to get approved by the voters, January 25 comes and there's already that reduction in the millage for the bond debt that goes away. You know, and then, you know, obviously, when we look at it, we're looking at it two ways. One, ultimately, how much is the new operational millage? But then two, what's the effect on a local taxpayer? And that's where the, you know, you look at the 2.42 mils, minus out the bond debt going off in millage, depending on what that will be based on, you know, the reevaluation in the new tax year. You know, it's a significant difference than being just the 2.42 mils that a taxpayer would pay in addition. So that's the good news moving forward. Ultimately, you know, that's for the taxpayers to decide whether they want to approve it or not.
I think it's good to point out too, because I hear this from the interpretation, when this is operational levy, when we collect the $3.3 million per year, that's a flat $3.3 million. So if house evaluations came in higher, we don't automatically collect a bunch more money. We collect that same amount of money, it just reduces and spreads out between it, kind of evens out with the.
Right.
So that's how our levies work with.
As the values go up, millage goes down. So a good example of that is the emergency levy that was passed in 2003. That was voted in for $3 million, and it was 4.85 mils at the time. Right now, that is currently collecting at 2.35 mils. So that millage goes down, the value stays the same. So we don't, you know, it's not 3 million or 3.3 one year, 3.5 the next year. It always will stay at 3.3 million.
I think it's also important, Jeff, you mentioned that, you know, the previous levy and this new levy. I think the reality of this new levy is to have funds, additional funds, to do what we're currently doing. So if those funds are not there, then a plan will be in place, because we'll have to approve it by January 31st, to not have services if it's not, you know, if it's not approved, as well as then the understanding that, you know, we're a service organization, and, you know, with 70 to 80% of our expenses being personnel, the reality of that is if you have to cut $700-some thousand one year and then 3.6 million the next, you know, that's a lot of personnel who will be unemployed, and that's the reality of the situation moving forward. So hopefully, as we talk about this levy, you know, the understanding will be is really to maintain what we have as far as a service level at this time.
Along with that, removing personnel would make class sizes larger, which has an impact on the students then, and the services provided for them.
Yeah, you know, class sizes, and ultimately, the new board will have to make a decision on exactly what is in that plan, because it'll have to be board approved. You know, there's all kinds of options that you're going to have to look at, whether it be busing, athletics, you know, extracurriculars, everything that is an expenditure, you know. We're trying to look at every single expenditure and determining, you know, what we can do to minimize this overall impact on students and staff moving forward. So, yeah, a lot of services that we provide, and we're going to be sharing a lot of that information out. You know, one of the things we're going to be talking about this morning is Gifted, and the fact that, you know, the services we provide are outstanding. But there's a minimum level that you have to provide, and there's the level we're providing. You know, these are things that we're going to be looking at moving forward, so, yes, all kinds of services.
All
Is
right.
there anybody else?
Any
that-
other questions on that, or?
Then we have the special meeting.
And, okay,
Then, as I referenced, that the board would have, after it's certified by the county auditor, the board would have to pass another resolution, which would be resolution proceeds. So, and again, this information is all due December 20th. I would like to have it delivered and have receipt in hand by December 19th. But with that, I would like to have the board meet on Friday, December 15th at 8 o'clock, or, you know, we can work with the state a little bit if we need to. Like I said, I would just like to have everything to the Board of Elections by December 19th. I worry about a blizzard or, you know, some mechanical issues, car issues or something. It's a lot of
Weather's
stress.
been crazy,
It's a lot of
so you never
stress
know.
on the day, so.
Fog.
But, yeah, so if there's, you know, any conflicts, this, you know, I just need a little bit of time to get the information back to the county
so
auditor.
you need probably 2 days at least between,
Mhm.
so we could do,
I mean, I'll be sending this out right after the meeting,
Mm-hmm.
if it's voted on.
I'm good with the 15th.
Does that work, the time? Is that good for,
everybody's looking at his calendar.
yeah?
Eight is tough for me on Friday.
Is another time better?
Could we do a little earlier or the afternoon?
Mhm.
Or
Earlier-
Thursday?
Earlier would be better, if we could.
Or Thursday's an option, too.
Yeah, Thursday's much better. If that works for
Works for everybody
Or I
else.
could do Friday morning, could we do Saturday?
Thank you all.
It's whatever works for you guys.
Any particular, do you want morning or
Yeah,
Sounds like
afternoon?
Thursday morning.
Thursday morning?
Does that work for everybody?
Sure.
At what time?
Yeah.
Well, evenings are always easier, but Thursday, I can do Thursday.
Does that work for you, Jen? Thursday, December 14th at 8?
Sorry to be the night.
No.
Oh, no,
fine.
that's perfectly
worries.
fine. I just threw a date out there.
We said 8 o'clock then, right?
Yes,
Okay.
on December 14th, so.
All right. Yep. All right, I need a motion to, for the resolution and the special board meeting date.
I move to approve.
Jeff, and Troy. And Carrie, would you please call roll?
Mr. Baden?
Yes.
Mrs. Brent?
Yes?
Mrs. Gwynn? Mrs. Derlutz?
Yes.
Mr. Miller? I apologize.
Minster lots. Like that.
Thank you.
All righty. Superintendent education reports, Jim.
Thank you. First, before I turn it over to Dr. Billings, obviously, as we know, last night I was notified around 8 o'clock that two of our buildings, Monclova Primary and Fallen Timbers Middle School, were one of, or two, or each of them were a part of a massive amount of emails, the same email that were sent to a number of school districts across the state of Ohio, as well as then apparently last Friday in Texas. In that email report, it indicated that basically, you know, there was going to be a bomb, potential of a bomb in these buildings today. And so when we get that notification, we then turn that right over to the police. Kevin and I, Neil Raymond, Brian Straczynski, met with the police departments, first started at Fallen Timbers, and then proceeded to Monclova. ultimately, as we do that, right, there's a number of things that happen as far as safety and security and considerations. I don't get into a lot of that details because those are in our emergency management plans, and we're asked by law enforcement not to share those out. But ultimately, know that there are certain procedures that take place in the event of these concerns. Like school districts, in our area and across the state, students are in session today. Safety and security is our first and most important actions that we take each and every day. And ultimately, we understand if parents want to keep their children at home today, as a result of these threats. The FBI, local law enforcement, state police, and so forth are involved in this investigation. And ultimately, as we've known and we've seen in past situations, that we call this a swatting event, they may or may not find out who did it. So ultimately, we will work with them and continue to work with them and provide updates as we get them from law enforcement. But it's unfortunate, and this is something that school districts across the nation have had to deal with in a variety of different ways, and unfortunately, us, Sylvania, TPS, Ottawa Hills, Washington Local, Findlay, Bowling Green, the list keeps going and going and going of who received these, and then Columbus and Cincinnati and others. So, like I said, we have school today, and we hope that it will be a safe environment as we continue to work with law enforcement to make it that way. So I just wanted to mention that to you. And yes, that's one of the reasons why I'm a little tired this morning, as well as everybody involved in that situation. So, Dr. Billings, we're going to turn it over to you. Nope. Chris, what do I press again? Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for letting me speak to you. This is like 8 a.m. meeting. I'm like Pam, I'm feeling the coffee here. I haven't had enough yet. So, I'm Brian Billings. I'm the Director of Gifted Services for Anthony Wayne. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the gifted services that we do offer. Dr. Fritz already mentioned that there is a little bit of a distinction in Ohio with gifted services. I know special ed was a conversation that we had not too long ago, and we'll kind of contrast some of that today. So, if you would be so kind.
Oh, sorry.
No worries.
Cue Jim.
Yep.
So, Ohio is a very weird state. So gifted, unlike special ed that has federal case law, gifted is a state issue. So every state in the nation kind of decides how they want to handle gifted. There are some states where a teacher can just decide a student's gifted based on performance. There's other states where it's very much like a portfolio assessment. Ohio is a test score state. So in Ohio, the primary means for almost everything in terms of gifted identification is all if you take a test and you score at a reasonable level. State test scores are excluded. We're not allowed to use the state tests for gifted ID, but we do offer a variety of that. Dr. Fritz kind of mentioned this, but identification is required in Ohio. We have to legally identify students, but services are not. Services are at district discretion. There are some funds earmarked for services, but we spend far more as a district than we get to provide gifted services. If a district decides to provide gifted services, there's some criteria we have to follow, but it's very much an individual district decision on what we want to do. We currently have 955 identified students in the district. Some of those kids only have an identification in one area. Most of them have at least 2 or more identifications. Identifications would be anything from like superior cognitive ability to specific academic performance in science, reading, math, creative thinking. There is visual performing arts. We have not in 10 plus years had any requests to do that. It would be involved in like portfolios and performance based, but that is not something that comes across our desk. So if you'd be so kind. We contract with the ESE of Lake Erie West for our primary gifted service providers. These are the 5 teachers that we employ. We changed this a few years ago when the district was gracious enough to support us at even a higher level by putting one full-time gifted teacher at every elementary school. So Krista Hertzfeld's at Monclova, Jennifer Thomas is our newest addition a couple years ago at Waterville, and Joni Gutierrez is at White House. They are the key people at each elementary school in providing gifted services. The staff goes to them with ideas even for the regular classroom students that they have. They are our key people. And then at FT, we have the Lauras. Laura Buchanan is our 5th grade staff member, and Laura Ambergy is our 6th grade staff member. We do, in addition, use some regular education teachers as gifted service providers. This is primarily done at the junior high and high school, where we use honors and AP staff to provide some services to identified students that we have. So as we mentioned, Ohio requires identification. It's kind of done in 2 pieces. So we have what's called whole grade screenings, where we're legally required to screen every student in a grade level. And then we have the referral piece, where parents, families, students, teachers come to us and say, hey, you need to look at this specific student. In terms of whole grade, we have to screen once in the K2 band. We wait as long as possible because we recognize that the young students are really challenging sometimes to get an accurate picture of. So we generally start in January or February of 2nd grade, and we administer both the COGAT, which is our primary ability test that we give, and then also the Iowa test in reading and math. We come back in 4th grade and give a second COGAT, and then at FT in the fall we give the Iowa. We also give a science portion at that point, so reading, math, and science. And those are the times where we whole grade screen all students in our district for giftedness. We also have a couple opportunities where we screen larger groups of students. This is primarily for acceleration. So in 3rd grade, we'll compile a list at every elementary school of high-performing math students that we'll screen for acceleration. And that acceleration means that in 4th grade, they actually take 5th grade math, and then they continue that trajectory. So all 3 of our gifted teachers teach a 5th grade math class to 4th graders at every elementary school. In 5th grade, we screen students for acceleration in ELA and science. That starts in 6th grade. And then 6th grade students who want to enter the junior high honors program can take a placement test in whatever subject they like in May of their 6th grade year. These are the current number of students that we serve by the service setting. So you can see the breakdown. Currently, Monclova has the largest gifted population, followed by White House and then Waterville. These grow over time because we screen more students. STAR Reading is also a progress monitoring instrument that we use, and STAR Reading is state approved for identification. STAR Math is not, figure that one out. But the reading portion is. So we'll identify students just through progress monitoring as well as we go. In the junior high level, you can see that the high school numbers are a little bit fuzzy because it's really hard to break it down by student. It's more about placements. So one kid could be taking multiple honors and AP classes. You know, we do have a few students taking 5 honors and AP courses. It's pretty much their entire caseload. But we have very healthy numbers of services. Last time I checked, I think we were around like 21% identified in our district, which is a very healthy number for us based on our population. Gifted services. So we have some that are very familiar. So the primary one that we hear from people is our LEAP program. Our Learning Enrichment and Acceleration program. LEAP is our grades 3 to 6 program. It's the primary #1 program that people think of. But in addition to gifted services, early entrance to kindergarten or 1st grade is a gifted service. Acceleration we talked about. And then our honors and AP programs at the junior high and high school level are also gifted services. So there's a wide umbrella. We always kind of refer to it as our umbrella of gifted services. In addition, there's just general good practices of enrichment and differentiation, other things that we do in a regular classroom that's good for not just the gifted student, but for all students that we have. So early entrance. We don't get a ton of early entrance requests because we use the later date. So the state allows you to use August 1st or September 30th as your kindergarten cutoff. We have the later date, so we generally only get 1 to 2 requests a year. In comparison, as I kind of go back and forth with working in Perrysburg, Perrysburg uses the August 1st date. They generally get 15 to 20 requests. And a lot of that is, well, my kid turns 5 on August 4th. School doesn't start till the 18th. Why can't they go to kindergarten? But for every single request we get, it's a time-consuming process. You're talking about a student sitting down with a school psychologist first, sitting down with us to do some reading and math assessments, basically letters, numbers, fluency. So for every student there, you're talking a bulk of time. So only having 1 to 2 is a nice time saver for us. We generally don't get requests to move early entrance to first grade. We did get one this year. It was the first one we've had in about 6 years. So our numbers in this area are very low, which is nice. Acceleration. So we try to be very specific with our language when we talk to parents, because acceleration in Ohio is a very formal thing. It's not just your students doing well, but we're talking about advancing a student out of their grade level. We primarily do this in subjects. We do get every now and again a request for a whole grade acceleration, right, for a student to move from like 3rd to 4th grade in all areas. But primarily we get requests for, you know, my 4th grader wants to take 5th grade math and those types of things. As we mentioned, we have specific times where we earmark and go after groups of students. But in addition to that, we get requests every month from families to look at their specific student in an area. So right now, for example, in our 5th grade math classes that we have, you can see our 16 at Monclova, 9 students at Waterville, and 12 at White House. When those students go to FT as 5th graders, they will then become like a cohort of students taking 6th grade math, and that will keep their trajectory going. These would be students then that, assuming they continue to make performance, we don't have any concerns, the parents don't have any concerns, they will then remain on an accelerated track for the rest of their academic career. We even have some students that move twice. I mean, we have 6th grade students in algebra. So our results and our feedback out of everything we looked at has been very positive. Our students are performing at very high levels, and the feedback from families is very good. As I mentioned, at FT, we screen in ELA and science. You can see 6th grade right now, we have 26 kids in ELA and 27 in science. Those are students that are 6th graders taking 7th grade honors courses that we house at FT. So we have students taking honors science 7th grade at FT, that when they go to the junior high next year, 7th graders will take the honors science 8th grade class. As I mentioned, LEAP is our like the #1 thing people always associate with us in terms of the name and the need. It's a math and reading focus, though we do try to make sure we're looking at the needs of all our students. Our gifted kids generally have tremendous academic performance, but do have some social emotional needs. You know, it's not unusual to talk about like the quirks of the gifted kid, the disorganization, those types of things. And we try to work with them and talk to them that if you know the answer but you scream at someone when you try to tell them, it's going to be a hard life. And our staff does a tremendous job of working with that. So that's kind of what we work with there. Junior high, we have an honors program. In 7th grade, it's science, ELA, and math. In 8th grade, they add in kind of a pre-AP social studies course. And students can test into those. You can kind of see the numbers of kids that we have currently. That is open to a variety of students. So those students in those classes aren't just identified as gifted. There are just high-performing regular education students in there. And our honor staff at the junior high and high school level do a tremendous job of meeting the needs of all the kids in their class as they go. The difference at the high school is just we add in advanced placement, right? The AP courses where students can test for college credit. Between honors and AP at the high school, we currently have over 20 classes that students can take, anything from honors ELA 1 all the way up to calculus AB and physics. So they have a tremendous amount of options. We even have, you know, art history is an honors course that they can take in that end. So we currently have over 1,000 placements just in honors classes alone, and then over 320 in AP courses in terms of student placements. So we kind of wrap up with the notion that, again, our focus is primarily on our gifted students, but we try to expand out, especially as adding a teacher at each elementary school to say, hey, this is a resource and a point person, and they do a tremendous job of working with all our staff. You know, the first grade teacher that comes down the hall and says, hey, I have a student that I think is doing tremendous work. I'm at a loss. What can I do to enrich and meet their needs? And our staff does a tremendous year. I've been here now running for about 10 years in the program, And the number of students that we're interacting with and the number of services we're providing has grown from then to now. And that's a testament to Dr. Fritz, Mr. Herman, and the board to provide the resources to help meet the needs of all our kids. So, does anyone have any questions?
How many AP classes, designated AP classes, are there at the high school?
I'm going to go out on a limb off my spreadsheet and say I think we have currently 13 teachers teaching AP, and I think one teaches 2, so I think we have 14. We don't qualify as a service, but we do have a couple of College Credit Plus classes as well at the high school, but we don't classify them on ours. So. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So legally in Ohio, parents have the right to request testing up to twice a year. We get, in an average month, probably 10 to 15 requests for students. So one of our monthly kind of maintenance tasks is just going through building sweeps of, okay, you know, we have these 3 students at Waterville we need to assess, or these 2 kids at FT, and we will go through and assess that, yeah. We can legally use one of like the whole grade screens as that, but we try to meet that request for parents and work with them, so we'll go in and above the 2 if it makes sense. We spread them out, right? So if we screen a kid on November 7th and they want to screen again, we're not going to do it on the 11th. You know, we'll say, hey, after the first of the year, or we'll use it. We have backup instruments, secondary things that we'll use so they don't get the same test in close proximity. But yeah, we do a lot of screening.
I'd like to say too, as a parent of a student who had Brian in class a few years ago, you know, that program, you know, the AP classes, the CCP classes are definitely part of the foundation that allows him to be so successful in college. I mean, he's 4.0 in 5th year of pharmacy school, and I think it's a testament, you know, as he talks, and we hear several kids talk about the foundation we provide to our kids going into some of these higher level programs, and you know, I think that just it's a true testament to what we do. So the program here is phenomenal, and we do appreciate the services provided to the students.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, legislative update. I mentioned this earlier, so I'll be very brief. You know, House Bill 187 is the bill I was referring to. It's gotten changed several times. We do expect it sometime this week to get approved. We'll see what it ends up being because there's been vast variations of it. So, but we do believe that, you know, something will happen this week, which will reduce taxes to our district. As 613 or 612 other public school districts will see the same effect. So we'll see where that goes. And there's several, like I said, several other smaller pieces of legislation dealing with specific things related to services we provide to students. So once again, we continue to monitor those and we'll keep you informed as they do pass. Local municipality increasing revenue. Waterville Township will be on the ballot for 4.5 mils. And they have stated publicly in the report that Karen provided, you know, it's like all of us. Their costs are going up. They need additional revenue to cover that. White House, obviously, their income tax failed, and they have been reported to be raising service fees, you know, whether it be water and other fees as well. So, you know, this is the area that we live in, and ultimately that's part of the discussion of why we're on the ballot as well moving forward. I want to say happy holidays to all of our students, staff, parents, and community. It's a time where hopefully, you know, with what we dealt with yesterday and into today, that peace can reign. And we can find peace with each other as a community. Does a great job in providing some outstanding services to our local students, so we can continue to grow as a community. And so hopefully everybody can have a happy holidays as we approach, you know, we're already in some, but also as we approach others, holiday that are coming up on the calendar. Next, I want to say thank you. Jana, thank you for your service here on the board. Troy, thank you for off and on stepping into this fun. It's been a ride. And Pam, thank you. Since 2007, 16 years on the board. That's outstanding. Not too many people choose to do that. So we thank you for your number of years of service to the district and serving in multiple roles. And we do have some cake, and it's Costco cake, so you have to get a piece of Costco cake to celebrate your service to the district. So we do thank you for all of those years. Next on my agenda, 24-25 school calendar, 25-26 school calendar. As I've talked about the last couple of months, we had a committee, and through working through that committee, getting input from the certified staff as well, those are the two options that they would like to move forward with. It's very similar to what we have this year and in past years. It's just maybe starting a little bit later into August and then finishing a little bit later into June versus finishing before Memorial Day. So that was their preference. It was pretty close to the other calendar, which was just a little bit of a variation of that. But that's what they want to move forward with, so I'm recommending those two calendars to you at this time. Overnight trips are two for the band. The first one is a normal trip. It seems, obviously as with the popularity of our marching band, they've been invited to Philadelphia for the Thanksgiving Day Parade, so we would ask that we approve those two as well, with the cost being associated with the students in regards to that, being covered by the students and the band boosters. Graduation approval. We have a few students who have finished at the end of this semester, will finish at the end of this semester, and we're asking that you approve them as early graduates for the class of 2024. Educational agreements, we have a contract with ProMedica for individual nursing services for a student. And so I would ask that you approve A through F at this time unless you have questions in regards to any of those items.
On the calendars, does the graduation, is that determined? I mean, I always, that's never on the calendar
Yes.
initially up front, but
Yeah, so we have to work obviously with BGSU and the Stroh Center. Right now, through the conversations I've had with Dr. Pfefferly, we're looking at that last Saturday in May, which I think was like the 30th or 31st.
31st.
And we're also talking about 24-25. We're not talking about this year.
yeah.
And so because when you look at the seniors and, you're allowed to give them 5 days excused at the end of the school year, and is what we typically have done. So you have to be careful of when that last date is and how you move back. And so we wanted to make sure that we were meeting all of our requirements with that graduation.
You typically still have a few days of school left,
Yeah.
potentially though, after graduation, yeah.
The other
But
question.
those
okay.
seniors would not be attending at that time.
Right.
Maybe then. On the, I know at one point, aren't our semesters uneven, and by moving back earlier into August?
Yeah, so really what happens, we try to balance each quarter and then each semester, right, with around 45 days. One may be 42, one may be 46 or 7, depending on when it is. We also take into consideration, when do we have our typical snow days or fog days and things like that. We do that because we want to balance it out to make sure we have enough hours for the high school classes because of Carnegie units and things like that. But also then, that also plays into when the breaks have been, right, and doing that. So it just depends on each calendar and how that fits into it all.
I just wanted to make a note too, to ditto Dr. Fritz's comments on thanking them, on behalf of the board, to thank Jana and Troy and Pam. Just my sincere appreciation over the years working with you guys. Lots of, unlike some people believe that we only talk during the meeting, or we've had several late-night conversations on the phone, many hours of discussions, and helping each other see the other side of the picture sometimes is good.
Thank you, Jeff, for that.
So I just wanted to say thank you for your service, and it's appreciated, and best of luck.
Thanks, Jeff.
And there are plenty of opportunities if you still want to be involved in the district,
Yeah.
obviously.
You can be a bus driver now.
Yeah, hey. You know what? I've now been through the bus driving class, the first one, so it's eye-opening. So, yeah, if you want to be a bus driver, we can set you up. Yes, yeah.
Crossing guard.
Crossing guards, yes. Tutoring, the Bridges program. We're fortunate enough today to go to, as an office here, to help pack food bags for our students and families. So there's all kinds of opportunities in our communities to help our students in many ways. And so just thank you for your services. I appreciate it. It's not an easy job, so thank you.
But it has been good, though.
Rewarding.
Yes, very, very much so.
So, like I said, I'm asking that you approve A through F at this time.
Gotta go with my brain not working again.
Troy?
Troy?
I'll second.
And Kyle. Carrie, would you please call roll?
Mr. Baden?
Yes.
Mrs. Brent?
Yes.
Mrs. Gwynn? Mr. Lutz?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Okay, superintendent personnel recommendations, Jim?
Yes. Resignations and retirements, as we talked earlier, we're starting to see some of our staff who have met the retirement requirements and will be retiring in the next school year, as you see those listed. Obviously, we want to make sure that we thank Beth Bundy, Jonathan Jones, Jennifer Martinez for their longstanding service to the district and all the years that they worked with students, and we thank them for that. Substitute employees, item B, I would ask that you approve those individuals at this time. Excuse me. Volunteers listed in item C. Limited supplemental contracts listed in item D. And supplemental contracts listed in item E. And then the contract amendments as listed in item F. I would ask that you approve A through F at this time in one motion unless you have questions.
I move to approve.
Kyle, in a second, please. Gina. And Carrie, would you please call roll?
Mr. Baden?
Yes.
Mrs. Brent?
Yes.
Mrs. Gwynn? Mr. Lutz?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Thank you.
We're having a good morning.
Yes, it's all good.
It's early.
Something like that. All right, Kevin, did we have any? So we have no one that wants to speak?
I did just want to share that the state auditor's office will be arriving on Wednesday, December 13th to start the annual audit for fiscal year '23, which is July 1 of '22 to June 30th of '23. So you will probably receive your letter questionnaire from them via email, I believe. You'll want to complete that, otherwise you might get a phone call. Maybe a board member or two has had that happen in the past, but they do look at those, so you'll want to be on the lookout for those, so thank you.
And that will pertain to us since we were on the board at that
Yes.
time.
Yes, and they'll be here probably till the end of February, so.
Okay. Anything else?
I move to adjourn.
No. In a second.
I'll second.
And Carrie, please call roll.
Mr. Baden?
Yes.
Mrs. Brent?
Yes?
Mrs. Gwynn? Mr. Lutz?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.